Welcome back to Capitol Hill, Secretary Duffy. Good to see you.
You too.
Air traffic controllers perform a very high-stress job in a very high-stress environment, correct?
Yes, they do.
And even before Donald Trump took office, there was a shortage of air traffic controllers. They're having to work overtime. That adds to the stress, does it not?
That's correct.
And I'll recall a March cabinet meeting where we were aware of you standing up for the air traffic controllers from the chainsaw of Elon Musk. And I want to thank you for standing up, even though at that meeting you were having to account for how many people had been terminated under DOGE. Secretary Duffy, on May 15th, this committee held a hearing discussing the Federal Aviation Administration, and during that hearing, I asked the FAA's Deputy Chief Operating Officer a very simple question. How many air traffic controllers have left the FAA since January 20th of 2025? He didn't have an answer. So I'll ask you now, can you tell this committee how many air traffic controllers have left the FAA since January 20th of 2025?
I don't.
And please don't tell me you don't know.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know that. But what I can tell you is that
This is such an important job. It's such.
Well, Congressman, I would say that we have new controllers that come in every month, and controllers are eligible for retirement, so they leave.
But are you trying to tell us that you don't know how many air traffic controllers are in the building, and how many have left the building? How many are getting ready to come into the building?
They're not in the building. They're in towers and centers and trade comms.
Figuratively.
Yeah, no. So what I can tell you is what I've done to keep those controllers from retirement when they're at the age of retirement, and the 56 is the age of retirement, but a lot of them can retire at 50, 51. We're asking them to stay on, and we're driving more controllers into the academy and out to be trained. And so, again, I can't force people to stay beyond their age of retirement.
Let me move on. I appreciate it. I don't have to remind you of the immense responsibility that comes with leading the Department of Transportation. And now, on top of that, you're also serving as an interim administrator of NASA, another role with serious demands and high stakes. And you're a family man. You got what, 7, 8 children? How many?
I'm 9, but close.
9?
9.
You got 9 children. You're a full-time daddy, full-time job at the FAA, full-time NASA. How can you're Superman? How can you be doing all of this?
So, some people might ask how I can do 9 kids, and I do it. And again, I love our country, and we need someone in the interim to make decisions and make sure we're leading forward with NASA. I'm honored that the president has given me this short-term capability, and but that is not going to impact my ability to do the important work of the DOT.
Well, I really would like to know how many air traffic controllers have left the FAA since January 20th of 2025.
I'll follow up,
Mr. Johnson. I
Thank
think
you.
there's 14,000 total, so it'd be kind of hard to know. Mr. Bost.
So apparently, the chairman of the Intelligence Committee has some kind of eyes that we don't know about because he took my first 2 questions. But as a Marine, I'm going to adapt and adjust, okay? His second question was about, and I'll explain this, you and I both support American-made goods and strengthening the supply chain. In the National Defense Authorization Act of 2020, Congress established a prohibition on the use of federal transit funds to procure passenger rail cars, trains, buses, and from Chinese and state-owned support groups like CRRC. Any expansion to prohibit requires contracts that were signed before 2020, and no significant modifications can occur, according to that law. The Biden administration provided Chicago Transit Authority with $200 million last year for rail replacement, and I have concerns that some of those funds could be up and being used to purchase from CRRC. So my question is, given the requirement of the law, Chinese state-owned rail manufacturers like CRRC, has DOT conducted reviews of the Chicago Transit Authority to continue, that they might be using these funds illegally?
I am not aware of that. I will circle back with FRA and I'll get you an answer on that, but I'll tell you this, I am committed to the Buy American provisions.
Okay.
And making sure that we are not funding Chinese companies to build product in the U.S.
Thank you. Also, both of you and I come from rural America, God's country, as we call it. And I hear from my constituents all the time that repairing rural roads and smaller cities, small towns are forced to compete for a smaller pie all the time. Mr. Secretary, do you think it would be beneficial for rural America to have a dedicated funding stream for rural and agricultural road improvements work to invest in the first mile and the last mile?
Listen, I do think it's important that we pay special attention to rural America. Oftentimes it can be forgotten, but it's great in this body and with the secretary who comes from rural America to understand the hardship even applying for grants, and how do we help them access more dollars to make sure their infrastructure meets the 21st century.
Well, I want to close out my last few seconds here by simply saying I think you're doing a great job, and I would want to let you know that in my committee, the VA committee, when Doug Collins, Secretary Collins gave testimony, I think it's wonderful to watch former legislators deal with legislators, and I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you, sir.
I want to raise a safety issue you may not be aware of, delayed implementation of secondary barriers in cockpits. Over a year ago, the FAA announced that they were starting the implementation of secondary cockpits on new aircraft. The requirement I authorized back in 2018 and reaffirmed in the 2024 reauthorization. These barriers, sir, were recommended by safety professionals after the horrific deaths of 9/11. We harden cockpit doors, but at some point during flights, the doors are open when pilots need coffee or they need to take a break or get a sandwich or take a restroom break. During these well-known periods of vulnerability, sir, flight attendants have often been very masterful in placing beverage carts before the flight deck. And I appreciate that labor groups, especially pilots, have been some of the strongest advocates for these safety devices and to keep crew and passengers safe, but we shouldn't have to rely on beverage carts. The very slow implementation to fix a well-known security risk, I think, is shameful. We can do better. Mr. Secretary, do you have any insights as to why implementation is taking so long, sir?
I don't. I will take a look at the issue, and I'd be happy to follow up and have a conversation with you on how we can, again, continue to drive safety on our aircraft.
Any personal insight, because I know you've been a member of this committee, I served with you,
I was having a hard time.
as to your personal feelings about these secondary barriers.
I would want to look at a number of different variables, but obviously we saw with 9/11, and we all, if you fly, you see this moment where the pilot will come out and use the restroom, and we do have our flight attendants there with, barricading with their carts. Again, I would like to look at all the issues around it, but I think you bring up a good point, and happy to look at it further and talk to you about it.
Thank you. And I'm willing to submit questions to your team, and we can talk about it over the phone
That'd be
in the
perfect.
future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Quick thank you on a project up in far northern California, the Tule Lake Airport. The FAA had mandated at least 13 years ago a safety fence to be built around that airport, and it's been really nothing but fooling around since, waiting for various reports. So it's finally moving along. It's much appreciated. Thank you for your people doing that. Now, California High-Speed Rail. This was passed in 2008, 17 years ago, a rail project from SF to LA that would be supposedly a high speed, and at a price at that time of $33 billion. We know now that the price is going to be somewhere around $128 to $130 billion. You've conducted a review on that. In that 17 years, they've only been able to put together $17 billion at best via state bonds, 2 different grants at the federal level, and a little bit of carbon tax money. So 17 years, $17 billion, they're $110 billion short. And their first segment, which is going to be from Merced to Bakersfield, they're calling it get this, the early operating segment of something that should have been done in 2020. They hope to have it done by 2033. Early operating, these people are funny. That plus oh, Mr. Fong's here, I was going to make a Bakersfield joke, but anyway. They're way behind on this, and you've conducted a review on should federal money, is it even upholding the promise? Is it even upholding the commitments? How has that review gone as you started that review earlier this year on further federal money going to that?
You're right. I mean, I'm not opposed to high-speed rail. I don't, you have it in Europe and Japan and China, but if we're going to spend billions of dollars, I think the American people and the taxpayer expect that you're going to build high-speed rail. And to your point, Congressman, I don't see, it's hard to see a pathway forward where they're already, 16 years in and $15 billion spent, and not one track, high-speed track has been laid. And it used to be from LA to San Francisco, now Merced to Bakersfield, not the two mass population centers of California. And so I want to look for good projects that are actually going to be built and let the American people see what high-speed rail feels like and how fast it moves people.
The Biden administration had basically an EV mandate that looks like a backdoor method towards CAFE standards to have high mile per gallon vehicles being forced upon the American public. What's your view of what's happening on that department's efforts to repeal the Biden EV mandate?
Well, so we're redoing the standard. Hopefully next summer we'll have that done. But again, 51 miles a gallon was not feasible or reasonable. They included EVs. I don't think the Congress anticipated that EVs be included in a fuel economy standard. And so we're gonna rework that rule the way that Congress intended and deploy more common sense. And the amount of money that is added to the cost of a car, we estimate $1,500 to $2,000 a car for the taxes or the carbon credits that have to be purchased for a fleet that can't meet the unattainable standard. Again, we're punishing the American taxpayer. That doesn't mean we don't want efficiency, we don't want to have options, but this is something different than that, is trying to drive an outcome by the consumer, and I think the consumer should always have the right to choose.
You began your speech by talking about how important it is to have safety in the Department of Transportation. I completely agree. I'm the ranking member of the subcommittee on railroads and pipes and hazardous materials. I want to talk to you about rail safety. As you know, Vice President Vance supported a rail safety bill. The President has supported rail safety, but it's been over 2 years since the Palestine incident, and we don't have a rail safety bill. I wonder what your position is, how you're going to push this forward, what you see should be in that rail safety bill.
Well, I have enough respect. That's in the purview of the Congress, but I do think that should be grappled with, debated, and how do we drive safety? East Palestine was horrific for those who lived there and nearby there. And again, I would join your heartfelt effort to make our rail system safer.
I appreciate that. And one of the aspects of rail safety is that the Class 1 railroads have requested a safety waiver from you. So this is where this is your purview, that would allow them to reduce visual track inspections from twice a week to twice a month. Ranking Member Larson and I wrote you about this, suggesting this would not be a good idea, but the trains claim that this would allow them to use ATI, automated track inspection. Is there anything that's keeping them from using that now? And can you comment on where that waiver is? And
Yes, we're thinking through that now. And again, I look at automated track inspection and driving safety and what can be gleaned from this technology versus the human eye. I think there's potentially a real differential. I am concerned about the employment side within the rail industry as well. But I think there's a lot of technology, whether we're seeing cracks in tracks or we're seeing overheated bearings or we're seeing issues on wheels. I think these cameras and technology can advance us light years in driving the safety and preventing early some of these derailments that are, as we know, are catastrophic.
Well, I think technology is helpful too, but we've heard testimony that 17 of 23 key track defects can't be seen by this technology. They require the human eye, so I'd hate to see us trade that expertise for something that's kind of trendy.
And I think that would be a great conversation that we could have together. Let's look at what we're seeing in data, what are you seeing? And I think it's just right. We want to get this right. And that's what my focus is, because in the end, all of us care about safety, and what are we doing to drive that?
Well, thank you, and thank you for your commitment to upholding the two-man crew that you mentioned in your confirmation hearing.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I yield back.
As the 435th most powerful member of Congress, generally a lot of my great questions have already been asked. So when I ask them, the first response you should say is, that is an incredibly gifted question, and I'll struggle to answer it, so that people will know that I'm on top of this issue. The first thing is the Tennessee Department of Transportation representatives will be in attendance at your press event tomorrow. I'm pretty close to most of those folks. I worked 16 years in the state legislature, and they are just hardworking public servants. Do you think they'll be allowed to provide input and their priorities for surface transportation reauthorization?
That was a brilliant comment and a remarkable question. The answer to that is, yeah, we do want, listen, they're on the ground. We want to hear their feedback, and that was the purpose of setting tomorrow up and bringing them all in and having listening sessions and roundtables.
And I know you're going to be announcing the priorities for the next highway bill tomorrow, of course. Can you give a preview of some of those priorities?
Again, I don't want to front run. I do think it's important to get data, get feedback, get information before I come out and say what I think we should do. And again, I think we're going to have a great collaborative effort. I think we all hear from our state DOTs what they want to see us do, but I'd like to have those conversations before we advance that conversation.
Okay. Do you think you'll have any discussion over safety or work zone bridges, truck parking, celebrating project delivery? And I'm very much afraid of autonomous vehicles, and I'll tell you why. Because I remembered our first meeting when I was the county mayor, and they talked about how that was going to be the greatest thing ever and that we would control it at the local level. And I thought, that's going to be a disaster, because if somebody doesn't like you, are they going to have the ability to turn your vehicle off? And at the national level, I'm all about freedom. I collect old motorcycles. Most of them just break down. They're mostly boat motors. Somebody's just going to throw them off the side of their boat, but they boat anchors, I guess I should say. But and I worry about people's freedom, and I hope you take that into consideration when we move. I know it's going to happen, but it scares the daylights out of me.
I 100% agree with you, and it's one thing I think we all grapple with as this technology advances. Some of those advancements can inhibit personal freedom, and
Okay.
we have to grapple with those issues.
Real quickly, air traffic control modernization. I hope that's going to be a priority. I know you mentioned it in New Jersey and other areas, and I hope that, could you briefly say something on that?
So 100%, we want to do this across the country. You gave us $12.5 billion that started in the House, and I'm grateful for the money that the House gave us. You're going to see us move faster and see this build. We don't snap our fingers. It takes time to lay fiber, but you know we are using copper. We are using floppy disks. This technology is really old, and I think it hasn't been done in the past because it's really hard. And I don't think this body has had faith in the FAA. Next Gen has, I think, been a complete failure. So we have the American people, the Congress, the DOT, the President, the FAA. We're all on the same page of making this a reality, because failure is not an option right now.
Right. Well, thank you. I've gone over my time, but I would tell you that some of the folks up here are still listening to 8-track tapes. So floppy disks might be in the future for them. Thank you.
Mr. Taylor says he's using 8-track tape.
Yes, he is. He's a lot older than I am.